The sun dipped behind the ragged desert mesas like a red coin sinking into dust. Evening wind ran low over the prairie grass, bending it like prayer ribbons toward the earth. It was one of those quiet frontier dusks when every sound, every hoofbeat, every breath, carried through the stillness. Kiona knew that if he didn't speak now, he never would. The young cowboy sat on a weather-worn fence rail, hat tipped low, boots white with trail dust from the day's work. His mind throbbed with the words he had spent weeks gathering courage to say. This wasn't a shootout or a cattle drive. It was something more terrifying. Talking to the woman he loved about a plan that could change both their futures. Clara stood a few feet away, her hands busy tying the last knots on a necklace she had been crafting all afternoon. Her fingers moved with the grace she had learned from her grandmother, quick, sure, respectful to the beads and stones she worked with. She often said each piece held a story, and she never let a story go unfinished. Clara, Kiona finally said, clearing his throat, I want to tell you something. Something important. She looked up, the warm glow of the twilight catching in her dark eyes. You sound like a man about to sell his best horse, she teased gently, though her smile softened with concern. He swallowed hard. Feels worse than that. Clara set down the half-finished necklace and walked toward him, dust rising around her moccasins. What is it? Kiona's hat felt suddenly too small for his head. My ma, he began. She says I've got to marry. Soon. Clara's eyebrows rose. And she's chosen someone, hasn't she? He nodded, shame twisting inside him like barbed wire. A woman from a good ranch family. Someone she thinks fits the mold. And you don't want that, Clara said quietly. I don't want anyone but you, he said, finally daring to meet her gaze. You know that. I love you, Clara. I always have. The wind stirred between them, carrying the scent of sage and distant campfire smoke. Clara sat beside him on the fence rail, folding her hands in her lap. Then why does this feel like you're about to tell me goodbye? Because, he said, breathing out, my ma's stubborn. She don't know you like I do. She's worried we're too different. She keeps saying a ranch needs a certain kind of woman, one who knows how to keep a house, cook for a crew, handle the daily chores. Clara tilted her head, studying him. And what exactly are you trying to say? Pretend to be my cook. She blinked. Your cook? For 1 week, he rushed out. Come to the ranch. Stay there. Cook meals, help with chores, just be around my ma. Let her see you ain't some stranger. Let her see your kindness, your strength. I swear once she knows you, she'll understand why I want to marry you. Clara stared at him, half stunned, half amused. You want me to come work for your mother? Pretend to be her cook. For a week. I know it sounds ridiculous. Ridiculous, she repeated. But it could work. He leaned forward, hope blazing in his chest like a brand in a fire. Clara, your food is amazing. You cook better than anyone I know. You keep a place warm just by being in it. Mom will see that. And maybe, it's crazy I know, but maybe she'll start liking you for me. The silence stretched a moment before Clara looked down at her hands. She brushed dust from her fingers, thinking. You asked me once, she murmured, why I make jewelry. Because you love it, he answered. Yes. And because every piece carries the history of the hands that made it. The memories of families, traditions, paths we've taken. I protect that. My people protect that. I know, he said softly. So if I come to your ranch, she said, lifting her gaze to him, it won't be as someone pretending to be anything. Not a servant. Not a stranger. Not a girl trying to win approval by hiding who she is. Kiona nodded slowly. I wouldn't want you to pretend. I just want Ma to see the real you. Clara smiled faintly. Then say that. Kiona inhaled deeply, steadying himself. Clara, will you come to the ranch for a week? Not as a cook, not as someone making herself smaller to please my ma, but as yourself? Will you help me show her that the woman I want to marry is already perfect as she is? Her expression softened. When you say it like that, how can I refuse? He grinned, relief washing over him like the cool breath of night. He took her hand, squeezing it gently. So you'll come? Yes, Clara said. I'll come. 1 week. The next morning, Clara arrived at the ranch with a small bundle of belongings. A woven blanket, a pouch of herbs, and a few tools she used for cooking and jewelry making. Kiona's mother, Margaret Thornwell, stern-faced, silver-haired, and sharp as a rattlesnake's shadow, stood on the porch watching. So this is the new cook, Margaret said, voice cool as creek water in winter. Clara nodded respectfully. I'm here to help for a week. Margaret's eyes swept over her, Her clothing, the beads woven into her braids, the straightness of her posture. Something unreadable flickered across the older woman's face. Margaret said. We'll see. The days that followed stretched long and dusty. Clara woke before dawn, working in the kitchen with calm efficiency. She prepared meals using a blend of her own traditions and the ranch's usual fare. Smoked corn stew for the ranch hands, fresh bread with herbs from the garden, beans slow-cooked with spices that filled the kitchen with warmth. The men, used to burnt biscuits and watery stew, practically worshipped her after the second day. Margaret, however, remained unbudging. She's polite, she muttered to Kiona one afternoon, but too quiet. A ranch needs someone who speaks up. She works hard, Kiona countered. Hard work isn't all. But Kiona saw how Margaret lingered near the kitchen door longer each day, watching Clara knead dough with sure hands, listening as Clara hummed soft songs her grandmother had taught her. He saw the way Margaret's gaze softened, not much but enough. Clara didn't try to impress her. She simply did what she knew, cooked, cleaned, tended plants, repaired old beaded belts in the storeroom, and once, when Margaret's arthritis flared, made her a poultice that eased the pain in her fingers. You didn't have to do that, Margaret said stiffly. I know, Clara replied. But my grandmother always said helping someone makes the world quieter. And quieter worlds are easier to live in. Margaret didn't answer, but later that evening, Kiona noticed her holding the teacup with far less strain. Still, the real change didn't come until the 5th day. A storm rolled across the plains like a roaring beast, tearing shingles from the barn roof and spooking the horses. Kiona and the ranch hands worked desperately to calm the animals while lightning split open the sky. Inside the house, Margaret slipped on wet floorboards while carrying a bucket of water. The crash echoed through the hall. Clara ran to her, kneeling beside her as thunder cracked overhead. Your ankle is twisted, she said immediately. Don't move. Margaret winced in pain. I'm fine. No, Clara said firmly, surprising both of them. You're not. She helped the older woman sit up, slid a folded blanket beneath her, then hurried to the kitchen for herbs and cloth. The way Clara moved, calm, focused, unflinching despite the storm, left Margaret speechless. You know what to do for this? Margaret asked, watching as Clara wrapped the ankle with careful hands. Yes, Clara said. My grandmother taught me how to treat sprains. We take care of each other where I come from. Margaret studied her, eyes narrowing, not with suspicion but with realization. You're nothing like the picture I painted in my head, she said quietly. Clara paused, meeting her gaze. Maybe you shouldn't paint people before you meet them. Margaret let out a short, surprised breath, a laugh, small but real. When the storm passed, when the horses calmed, when the sky cleared into a deep violet twilight, Margaret looked at Clara with a softness Kiona had never seen in her. Stay for dinner, she said. Clara smiled. I was planning to cook anyway. The week ended with the ranch glowing in the warmth of Clara's meals and presents. The workers joked with her. The house smelled better than it had in years. And Margaret, though she didn't say it outright, watched Clara with the gaze of someone rethinking her expectations. On the 7th evening after supper, Margaret set her fork down and cleared her throat. Clara, she said, walk with me. They stepped onto the porch together. Kiona watched anxiously from the doorway. Margaret spoke first. My son is stubborn. Always has been. When he said he wanted to bring you here for a week, I thought it was a foolish idea. She folded her hands. But I was wrong about you. Clara waited calm. You're steady, Margaret continued. You're patient. You're respectful. You bring peace into this home. Those things matter more than any ranch pedigree. A long breath escaped her. If my son wants to marry you, I won't stand in the way. Clara's eyes lifted, shimmering in the last gold of dusk. Thank you, she said softly. Margaret nodded. Take care of each other. That's all I ask. Kiona burst onto the porch then, unable to contain himself. So you mean it? You approve? I said I won't stand in the way, Margaret corrected, though her lips twitched with the hint of a smile. Don't push your luck. Clara laughed softly as Kiona wrapped his arms around her, holding her against his chest. You did it, he whispered. We did it. No, Clara said, touching his cheek. Your mother and I did. A month later, beneath a sky as wide as eternity, with the wind rolling across the prairie like music, Clara and Kiona stood before a small circle of family and friends. Her people came from the nearby settlement, bringing songs and blessings. His neighbors arrived on horseback, hats in hand, offering warm smiles. Even Margaret stood proudly in the front row, her ankle healed, her expression full of a quiet acceptance Kiona hadn't seen in years. Clara wore a dress she had sewn herself, with beadwork along the sleeves telling the story of her journey. Kiona wore his cleanest shirt, though Clara teased him that it still smelled faintly of horses. When they exchanged vows, the sky turned soft and pink, and even the wind seemed to pause to listen. When they kissed, the ranch hands cheered loud enough to startle the chickens. And when the sun dipped behind the mesas once more, Clara whispered to Kiona, "You asked me once to pretend to be your cook. I think what we made together is bigger than any pretending." Kiona smiled, pulling her close. "We made a home, Clara. Our home." They rode off together into the settling twilight, the lonely cowboy no longer lonely, and the woman he loved shining beside him like the warm heart of the Wild West.